Hi folks, welcome to RJA Impact. Today we're going to be talking about this week's events in the trial of Paul Flores in respect of the Kristin Smart disappearance 26 years ago. Court didn't meet on Monday and Tuesday this week, so we had witness testimony on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, that's 24th, 25th and 26th of August. Our first witness on the stand on Wednesday was Rhonda Doe. I should just warn you here, there are some pretty graphic themes of an S-ul nature going on in her testimony. We heard about an incident that took many years after Kristin's disappearance in January 2008. Rhonda had been to a party at the Thirsty Club in Redondo Beach and Paul Flores turned up on his bicycle around closing time. Rhonda's friends had invited Paul to hang out with them at her house, but he said he needed to go home first and asked Rhonda to walk with him. Rhonda says she agreed and walked about 10 to 15 minutes from the Thirsty Club to Paul's house in Lawndale. Rhonda had had a few drinks at the club and she says during the walk she'd sobered up and she was fully aware when they reached Paul's driveway. A glass of water was key to what happened next. Apparently Paul had offered Rhonda a glass of water and he went into the kitchen to prepare it. Well, you might ask, how do you prepare a glass of water? Well, in Paul's case we don't know because Rhonda said she didn't recall whether she saw him pour the water into the glass. As she was drinking the glass of water, Paul offered her, in quotes, a house tour. I remember going into his bedroom and I honestly do not remember much after that, she said. So she says she lost consciousness and when she came to, she was in Paul's bed with Paul naked on top of her. Was this with your consent, Puvril, for the prosecution asked. No, I don't even remember how we got to that point. She remembers coming to a few times during what I'll call the ordeal, and on one occasion Paul was asking her what his name was, and she couldn't remember, and Paul seemed pretty satisfied with that, she said. On another occasion she came to, this time to find Paul putting a ball gag in her mouth, which was, in his words, so that we wouldn't wake up his roommate. While he was doing this, he was having sex with her. I would never have consented to that, she said. I have a medical condition, so I would not consent to it. Flores drove Rhonda home after the ordeal, and she said that she was bleeding and sore for 2 days afterwards. Puvril homed in again on her level of awareness and asked, what was your level of awareness on the walk to Paul's house? And she remembers being very alert at that time. Puvril also asked, was there a clear line as to when you started going in and out of consciousness? And she said, yes, it was when we were in his bedroom. Did you report this incident to law enforcement? I did not, was her response. Why not? He asked. Well, she said, I was confused at the time. I remembered so little of it. I also knew that rape cases rarely get tried. There seemed to be no point. So when did you finally reach out to law enforcement? She was asked. Last year. I was scrolling on my phone and I saw Paul's picture. When he was arrested, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe it was the same person. So I contacted law enforcement. In May 2021, she was shown a 6-pack photo lineup and identified Paul from that. What level of certainty does she have in the courtroom today that Paul Flores is the man that raped her? I'm certain there's something in his eyes that is ingrained. That's something I did not forget, she said. On cross-examination, attorney Robert Sanger for Paul Flores questioned Rhonda about her memories. You seem to not recall a lot of things, he put it to her, and referred to her forgetting Paul Flores' name. Her response was, at that time I couldn't recall it. It's very confusing waking up with someone on top of you. Sanger was asking her where she lived over the years, and particularly in 1996 and 1997 when she was at Cal Poly, and it was established that she was at one point living no more than 3.2 miles from Kristin Smart's billboard in the Arroyo Grande village. She says, however, that she doesn't recall ever going there. Rhonda apparently was aware of the publicity surrounding Kristin Smart's disappearance, and she said that while she was aware of it, she was never aware of Paul Flores as being a person of interest. Sanger came back to the night in 2008. Do you recall whether Paul's dogs were barking to greet you at the gate? "No, you don't recall a lot about that night," he reiterated. However, she was able to recall the route that they took back to Paul Flores' house on that night. Sanger put it to her, "Paul came to visit you after this, didn't he?" Rhonda put it differently. "He showed up at my house." And we found out that Paul had tried to call her, but she'd blocked his number. Following a juror question, we heard that Paul's demeanour during the walk back was very normal. He was being polite, nothing that stood out. What kind of bicycle did Paul have on that fateful night? Not a mountain bike or anything I would call it like a BMX bike, she said. Ruben Flores, attorney Harold Mesick, declined to ask any questions after that. We then had our favourite DA investigator, JT Camp, not for the first time, and I'm sure not for the last. He was asked to fill in some of the facts about how he conducted the lineup where Rhonda identified Paul. And there was quite an interesting tell here. While Sanger was cross-examining Camp, a couple of times he referred to the, in quotes, other person involved, instead of referring to Paul. Now, does this hint at what their defence is going to be? I don't know, and there was no more clues as to what he meant by this, at least at this point in the trial anyway. And that was it for the day. On Thursday, our first witness was Gail LaRocque, another retired dog handler. And like the others we've already heard from, she was also a certified human remains dog handler. We heard about her certification process, etc. She said that her boxer, Tori, was certified by CADA for wilderness searches, urban search and rescue, water searches, disaster searches, evidence searches, and advanced human remains detection. And here's a photo of Tori. I've managed to get a photo of all of them so far. A bit like the other dogs, attorney Robert Sanger for Flores objected to more than one photo of Tori being shown to the jury, presumably because dogs melt the heart and all that. But anyway, here's Tori wearing a shabrak. It's an indication to the dog that she's working when she's wearing it. And here's that second photo. All the same questioning about how this certification and the training process took place was gone through, and I won't repeat that line of questioning here. Anyway, let's cut to it. On June the 29th, 1996, LaRocque and Tori were called to Cal Poly's Santa Lucia Hall. She testified that she wasn't aware that there were other dogs searching on that day. So, you've guessed it, the dog ran down the hall, stopped, did a U-turn, and stood outside room 128, and we all know whose room that is. She testified that she was still at the far end of the hall, and she'd asked the detectives to please open that door. And they opened it, and she gave Tori the command, "Search bones," and Tori went into the room. LaRocque was just outside the door at this point. She said Tori first showed an interest in the mattress on the right side of the room. The one on the left side of the room was not on the bed frame. Tori bit her bringsel and brought it back to LaRocque. She was given the command to find the strongest scent at that point, and she wasn't able to, and so Tori went back and circled the room again. Tori wasn't able to pinpoint the exact point of the strongest scent, but LaRocque testified that she interpreted her dog's alert, and therefore the scent of human remains, to be stronger on the left side of the room. She got into the far left corner of the room and she got very excited. She smelled the carpet, she scratched the carpet, and then she brought me her bringsel again. Again, a small grey trash can that was in the back left corner of the room. Tori actually picked that up and brought it to me. Outside the room, detectives had placed the trash can that Tori alerted to in a lineup with two other identical trash cans, and the dog again alerted to the actual trash can that was from Flores's room. The conclusion being, or the interpretation rather, was given that there was deceased human scent on that garbage can. During cross-examination, Robert Sanger questioned the legitimacy of CADA, which was the organisation that maintained the standards and the certification process. Sanger, a bit like he has to the other dog handlers, tried to diminish somewhat LaRocque's standing. For example, he established CADA again is a private organisation, and you were a volunteer, correct? LaRocque was asked. For CADA, yes. but she was paid when she worked for another organisation, FEMA, she responded. You were not a sworn police officer, correct? Oops, Sanger should have done his homework on this one. No, that is not correct. I was sworn in by Alameda County Sheriff's Office. Another oops. Sanger put it to her that Adela Morris was the only person that signed your certification. I think again he's trying to come back to this point that he's made before with the other dog handlers about it being some kind of big club, they all sign each other off and have dinner together, etc., etc. Anyway, in response to his question, LaRocque responded, no, she was the last person who signed it. Once 4 others also signed their initials. Sanger again tried. So she was the primary person who signed it? No, she was the last person who signed it, was the response. Sanger put it to her about the rules of law in these situations. Are you aware that an alert by a dog is not evidence, but only an inference? And Pouvrel objected to that question. Some further questioning was about where dogs could or couldn't have false positives. Anyway, one exchange was quite funny. Sanger asked her, your dog was friends with Adela Morris's dog, right? And Pouvrel immediately objected. Objection! Dogs have friends? And at this point apparently the whole courtroom laughed, including the judge. Again, this one made me laugh. Sanger was asking LaRocque whether she knew the chemical compounds that a dog was responding to, and she responded by saying she didn't know the chemical compound of chocolate cake either, but she knows it when she sees it. At this point several of the jurors laughed. Anyway, he fired back feistily. Did you see a chocolate cake, ma'am? Do you think this is funny? This is a murder trial. Ms. Sickville Paul Ruben asked her on cross about her dog. She may have been interested in other smells in that trash can, right? LaRocque responded by saying, interested, yes. Enough to alert and bring it to you? LaRocque said, only if it contained the scent of human remains. Missick also tried to drill into whether or not the dog had given false positives before. Somewhat a bit differently to the other dog handlers, both defence attorneys had asked her about the red tape on Paul Flores' dorm room. In other words, this is something which would have attracted the dog, etc., to that particular place. And she responded that she said she noticed the red tape on the door only after her search was complete, and doesn't recall seeing the tape on the other doors in the building. Now, I'm not sure whether the tape was therefore put on after the other dog handlers had visited the room and their dogs had alerted, or there was some other reason that, for example, they had taken the tape off when the other dog handlers visited. I don't know. We then had the second witness for the day, Angie Carousel. She was a former girlfriend of Paul Flores, and they'd dated for about 2 years, sometime around 2004 and 2007. Pouvrel asked her about a meeting she'd had with his parents. At some point, did Paul Flores bring you to Arroyo Grande to meet his parents? Yes, I met Paul's mother, her boyfriend, and Paul's father. When she visited Ruben Flores' Arroyo Grande home, she was taken on a brief tour around the house, and when they got to the backyard, she saw some avocado trees and began to walk towards them, since avocados are her favourite, she said. She said, there were a few avocado trees, and I went to walk up to get one, and I was quickly redirected away from that area and back around to the front of the house. The mood quickly changed, she said. Ruben Flores seemed upset, she said. During this visit, she also found that, in her words, that's when I learnt that Paul wasn't paying his bills, his parents were paying them for him. She finished for the day and was back on the stand on Friday morning. Asked a little bit more about the tour. She was asked whether she saw the dogs there, and she said that yes, there were 5 of them. And were they barking? And she responded yes, and apparently these were being kept under the decking. Under cross-examination, we established that Angie and Paul Flores were living together at that point in their relationship. He also asked her about this change of mood and her trying to get to the avocado trees, and her story pretty much remained the same. She said that it didn't appear that Ruben Flores liked her. Perhaps it was because of the dog she was redirected away. No one wanted you to step in dog poop. I don't know, she responded. Under redirect, Pouvrel for the prosecution asked her, after this, were you ever invited back to the home of Ruben Flores? No. What was his demeanour? He was rude. He didn't seem to like me, she said. So she was excused, and then the Judge O'Keefe told the jurors that the attorneys would need to prepare for the next witness because apparently there was some new evidence presented that would result in a delay. The only reason I mention this is because after 26 years, the attorneys having to consider new evidence at this stage in the game is quite something, isn't it? And how did the week wrap up? Well, like this. Judge O'Keefe said after the break, this was late morning, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have some good news and I have some bad news. We are not able to resolve the issue we had this morning, so I'm going to let you all go and enjoy your weekend in a minute. This is not going to delay anything. We are making good time. Sometimes things happen that are outside of our control." Well, this has got me really piqued. What on earth could be being presented at this late hour? And on that bombshell, as they say, the court adjourned and it's back on Monday, August the 29th at 8:30. And I'll see you then. Bye for now.